Well, I did it. I built this first version of a Z80 board. It is mostly for experimentation because I'm still deciding what the configuration of my system will be, my final system will be, but it actually works. It took quite a while to put all the components on the board. There's like 20 bypass capacitors and a handful of logic chips and some connectors, and it was actually a little tedious to populate the board, but it reflowed good, and I only had to touch up a few pins on the 100-pin chip because they didn't solder well. So I'm still learning how to get solder paste onto a board, and in this case, it was a little light. I had switched to thinner stencils because I was getting solder bridging with the thicker stencils. But now I see that maybe as my technique has improved, I can handle a thicker stencil and not have the event of not enough solder on a pad. The board is built around this 100-pin chip, which is a Z80 intelligent peripheral controller, they call it. It's basically a Z80 with a PIO, a SIO, clock generator, counter timer chip, all on one chip, so it made it easy to have a lot of ports and stuff on the board without a lot of discrete logic. The memory is 128K with bank switching of the upper 32K. It has a USB port for console I/O. It has an SD card interface. I'm going to bit bang SPI to that card. I think that'll work. Since it has PIO, it has two parallel I/O ports where there's a mode where each individual bit can be set as an input or an output. I'm only currently using up 2 of those bits for the bank switching, so I have 14 GPIO pins to play with. Now I'm going to set aside a few of those pins to do the SPI to the SD card. So that'll take about 3 more pins. I measured its power consumption, and when it's just idling, it's only using 30 milliamps of power, which is really nice. My original Z80 had a gigantic power supply, many amps, and I guess some of that was because it was an S100 box, so they needed to have a hefty power supply. I'm running it at 16 megahertz and no wait states, and that seems to work. I'm currently having a little problem with the Kermit file transfers. I can transfer small files, no problem, but larger files will accumulate errors. Now, I know why, and that's because I needed to put a 4.7 microfarad bypass capacitor on the USB power supply, and I couldn't find one. I am supposed to have a supply of those. So I decided, hey, I'll just run the board without it and see what happens. Well, I'm getting noise on the USB port. So those come in tomorrow and I'll get to test that again. But I have no reason to think that this board should have trouble with Kermit file transfers. The first program I tried out on it was Blink, and it took a little debugging, but I got Blink working. I then got Hello World working. I got the serial to USB port working, and it all works really nice now. As you can see, I can just run my monitor for real instead of in an emulator, and now that emulator project can go on the shelf. I don't need it anymore because I have this board to experiment with. So as I mentioned in a previous video, I'm currently writing a disassembler and single stepper based on that Byte Magazine article. And once I get that going, I will get the SD card interface working. And once I have that, I will have a complete monitor and with file storage, and I will be able to just button that up and think about designing a board where that's all on EEPROM, but as small as possible EEPROM. Coming along, because someone mentioned in a comment, when I was talking about an AVR board that I built, someone said I should really try a PIC processor. I did order a 32-bit PIC in my last order to Mouser, so I can see I might have a video coming along where I build a minimal board with this PIC 32. So that's it. That's an update, and it's a great milestone for me. I'm back in business with Z80s, and I'm going to see where that project progresses to. What can I do with a Z80? Well, there's all kinds of retro things you can do, and I'm thinking I might have some applications that I've always wanted to do with a Z80 that I'm finally going to get to do. So that's it.